All right, one of the best SR supports in the game has just dropped on Jujutsu Kaisen Phantom Raid on the global side, along with Yaga. And honestly, one of the more difficult names to say, I think, in my opinion, Yoshinobu Gakuganji is an insanely good support. So today we're going to be doing a character guide for him so that you guys can maximize his potential. We're going to start by taking a look at his kit and what he can do. So if you already know what he can do, feel free to skip past this part of the video to where we start talking about, teams that are good for him, what recollections you want to run on him, skill upgrade priority, all of that other good stuff. So starting with his skill 1, Cursed Energy Burst, deals 80% Jujutsu damage to the selected enemy, decreases the selected enemy's Jujutsu damage by 10% for 3 turns, and then if alternate tuning is active, it'll change the skill effect. So this is a very interesting character because he has basically 2 skills with every skill. Deals 100% Jujutsu damage to the selected enemy and increases the enemy's damage received by 10%. So this one decreases the amount of damage they do. This one increases the amount of damage they receive, which is really, really good. His skill 2 is called Tuning, increases own Jujutsu damage by 10% for 3 turns, activates or deactivates the alternate tuning state. When you upgrade it to level 10, you do get an additional 5% Jujutsu damage, so he'll do a little bit more damage, and that chip damage does matter, but once again, he's a support character, so it's like, upgrading it doesn't really do a ton for you. Whereas like if you upgrade skill 1, right, it's going to increase these percentages, and I do think these percentages are going to be a little bit more valuable over skill 2. So skill 2, in all honesty, is going to be one of the skills that you want to probably, it's not at the top of the skill upgrade priority list, probably at the bottom. However, even though it's at the top or at the bottom of the upgrade priority list, that doesn't mean it's the skill you're going to end up using the least, right? Because this is kind of your skill that's going to let you switch between having alternate tuning activated and deactivated and which of the skills you're going to be able to use, right? So you'll actually use this skill quite a bit. His skill 3 is Cursed Energy Beat, deals 120% Jujutsu damage to all enemies, increases all enemies taijutsu and jujutsu damage received by 25% for 4 turns. That's a pretty solid debuff. And then if alternate tuning state is active, changes the skill effect to this. Deals 100% Jujutsu damage to all enemies, so still an AoE, inflicts the confusion status on all enemies for 3 turns at a 30% chance. At level 10, it does go up in percentage. And then stuns all enemies with an 80% chance for 1 turn. Once again, at level 10, it's a pretty high chance, 131%. Honestly, I wish I could have both of these skills on one thing without having to switch between them, because having the stun and the buff to damage would be absolutely immaculate, right? But for an SR character, I can understand why they didn't do it, but it's still crazy that an SR character has both of these. So skill 3 is going to be like his bread and butter. Both Yaga and Gakuganji, skill 3 is their best skill, right? So keep that in mind. And then his ultimate is Cursed Energy Melody, deals 360% Jujutsu damage to all enemies, so another AoE for 3 hits, decreases all enemies damage dealt by 25% for 2 turns, so this gives you more survivability if you need it. Can be useful in certain stages of Illusory Tower. If alternate tuning state is active, it's going to change the skill effect to deal 480% Jujutsu damage to all enemies with 3 hits and decrease their ultimate count by 1. So just depending on the scenario, right, you might want to use different things. Personally, I think the decreasing damage dealt will probably be used more than decreasing the ultimate count, but there could be like some stages like where you have to take on the imaginary realm and you need to decrease their ultimate gauge so that they don't ult. Like that could be useful. This could be actually a really big, this part here could be huge for people, because before Nishimiya was the character that did this with decreasing ultimate count gauge. Well, now there's a SR character that I would say is available to most players because you're pretty likely to pull him within your free summons, because you at least get 2 free multis. I think you have a decent chance of pulling him unless you're just super unlucky. But readily available character that can decrease ultimate count. I think this is really good. And then for auto skills, he has none, because once again, he is an SR character. So overall, for an SR character, I think insanely good. I'm surprised that they released an SR character later in the game. We'll see if they continue to release more every now and then, because a lot of gacha games eventually get to this point where they just stop releasing SR and rare characters and stuff like that, and they just release the SSR, UR, LR versions depending on the type of game, right? So very interesting. Now, talking about what you should be working on, let's start with the skills. So I did not make this. Shout out to the community Discord for making this guide right here. Always want to let that be known. And I just like going over this. I like reviewing it, telling you guys what I agree with, what I don't agree with, and maybe giving you some more recommendations for recollections and potential teams that you could run with this character. So his skill 3 is going to be the primary upgrade, or the skill that you want to upgrade first. And I kind of said that already when we were talking about his kit. His skill 3 is his bread and butter. It is his best skill by far because of the debuffs that it can offer, switching between stunning and giving extra taijutsu and jujutsu damage. Very, very good. His next skill that you want to upgrade the most is the ultimate, because the ultimate once again is an AoE. It's also going to have good effects as well. So I agree that skill 1 is your first skill 3 is your first upgrade, ultimate is your second upgrade, and then I did mention this, skill 1 should be your third upgrade as well, because that's going to give you more damage. Skill 2 is really just the tuning that lets you switch back and forth. It's not really going to do a whole lot, so upgrading it gives you a little bit more jujutsu damage, but like it doesn't matter that much. I think overall upgrading skill 1 is actually going to be the better move. Now, I did look at what the JP players recommend, and the JP players actually recommend doing skill 2 over skill 1, but I think this just makes more sense. So I actually do agree with the community Discord on this one, but you know, just if you tend to lean towards following what JP does, they do skill 2 over skill 1 for upgrade priority. But in terms of skill usage priority, once again, it's going to be use skill 3 all the time as much as you can until you can't, and then you want to use the ultimate whenever it comes up. So that's general skill usage priority. I guess skill 2 is up there for usage priority too, if you end up needing to use the alternate tuning to switch your effects, right? So it's kind of tricky with this character to say skill usage priority. As for materials, there you go. That's what you need. You need the precious gemstone jewelry and the bell waist ornament. If you farm out these 2 materials and like the silver, the gold, because there's it's the same 2 materials for every character through every grade, but the rarity changes. So just farm that out if you don't have this character yet, if you're thinking about pulling still or whatnot, and then you'll be able to grade him up really quickly. The memories for this character, the free-to-play memories, I honestly didn't remember what they did, so I have them pulled up so I can go over them with you guys. I can tell you what the summonable memories do. We'll go over those here in a second. But for the free-to-play memories, so we'll start with the Source of Stress, because this one's the new one. Source of Stress is going to, when command skill is activated, decrease all allies' damage received by 10% for 2 turns. Gives more survivability, pretty solid. And it's 15% when you limit break it to level 3, which is really good. And then when a skill is activated, if the target enemy is in a debuff state, which hopefully they will be because of Gakuganji, decreases all debuffed enemies' damage dealt by an additional 15%, which can honestly be huge with this particular character. Now, for the other recollection, Visit to Fukuoka, it is more of a survival recollection. So when command skill or ultimate skill is activated, recovers own HP by 30%, and then at the start of battle, decreases own damage received by 20%. Notice there's no real buffs for the allies or whatnot, even though he's a support type character. This is because he's an SR character. His stats are not the highest, and therefore he's going to need a little bit more help surviving than an SSR character overall. Now, as for the summonable recollections, these options are really good. I got a couple more options for you guys. Mutual Trust is going to give damage reduction to the team. A Wish from the Past is going to give healing to the team. Rest for Adults is going to give healing to himself. It's also going to give extra damage to the team from turns 4 to 6. It also gives him ultimate gauge. And then A Slight Gap is going to give him some healing as well, more survivability. This is another survivability recollection. Now, besides those 4 recollections, there are 2 more that I would recommend as options for this character. Okay, so a lot of times when you're running Gakuganji, you're going to be running him with Yaga, and if you're running him with yellow Yaga, you're probably running him with a mostly yellow team. So a definite option you could run would be Reunited with After the Rain, because this one's also one I recommended for Yaga as well. But when command skill or ultimate skill is activated, it increases all allies damage dealt by 20% for 3 turns, effective for yellow type attacks. A lot of times you're running this character with yellow type teams and characters, so this could be a decent recollection to run. Now, if you're not running him with yellow type teams or recollections, you might not want to run this, okay? But just something to consider. And then when critical hit or Black Flash is performed, he increases his own crit hit rate, and crit damage goes up as well. The other option, this one feels like an obvious one, But Unity from top to bottom, it's just a really good recollection. You can run it on pretty much any support character because it's going to give you extra when command skill or ultimate skills activated, increases all allies ultimate skill gauge charge rate by 30%, limit break level 3 35%, and then post adjustment here fills ultimate skill gauge by 200, but it's only one time. But that's still all really good for giving allies ultimate gauge, which could ultimately help your team in the end. So GAKUGANJI being a support character just makes sense that you would want him to also give ultimate gauge to your teammates as well. Now, as for the breakdown and why he is actually so good as an SR support, he is a top tier debuffer who can apply stackable AoE debuffs. The AoE part is like the beautiful part. I didn't even really mention that before, but the AoE is the really good part. Debuffs and gains extra effect when in an alternate tuning mode, so he can switch between effects and add like stuns or whatnot if you need. Applies taijutsu and jujutsu damage, take an increased debuff to enemies for multiple turns with the skill 3. Applies damage reduction debuff to the enemy with ultimate while dealing AoE jujutsu damage. He enters alternate tuning mode with the skill 2. He gains the effect of extra debuff, damage, confuse, stun, and ult counter reduction. So yeah, he gains a lot of things when he switches. Downside, since he is a SR unit, his stats are slightly lower, and you may have to rely on memories to keep him alive. Like I said, because stats are lower, he's going to die easier. Also, easier to get as a SR unit, so getting him will help with clearing a lot of content in the game, especially for free-to-plays. Like that is one of the upsides. I kind of touched on all that, so I definitely agree with their reasoning and their breakdown with what they've said right here. Now, then for the teams, we got some teams right here. So this bottom team right here is going to be one of the main teams, in my opinion, that you're going to be running GAKUGANJI on, because we have him, and this is global right now, right? We have him on global, we have Yaga on global, Kaido on global, and we have hidden inventory on global. Now that all these characters are on global, I do think are on global. I think this is one of the best teams you can run. Another option, this does make sense, running Gato here. You're running mostly green characters, and then you run red Yaga, and this is also a very good option as well. Honestly, as a support character though, like I'm not gonna lie to you guys, you could run him on pretty much any team you want because he's not restricted to being a supporter for like yellow type units. Kind of like Yaga's restricted, like he can support other units, but he does extra support for yellow units, so you want to run him and maximize his potential with yellow units. GAKUGANJI doesn't have those limits, so you can run him with literally pretty much any attacker or any team you want. So if you wanted to run Yuta in this spot, if you wanted to run Toji in this spot, you could run any of those characters and it would be completely okay. As for duping out this character, do I think it's necessary? I don't think it's necessary in terms of damage, but in terms of HP, as we mentioned, he's a little bit squishy. So getting that extra HP, getting at least one dupe for that extra HP, because it's 25% extra HP with one dupe, I do think is kind of helpful. So if you guys are able to get this SR character and get one dupe for him, I think that's really good. Keep in mind, a lot of you guys probably actually have extra versatile dupes for SR characters that you haven't used. So if you just pull a copy of him and then use the versatile dupe, it will work on him as well. So just something to think about. Hopefully that helps you guys out. And if you guys did enjoy the video, please consider going down there, hitting that like button, hitting that subscribe button. And thank you guys so much for watching and supporting the channel. Peace.